Hello, my name is Chris Cook with Southeastern's English Department and the Dual Enrollment Program. Today we're going to be talking about reviews. Now, most likely if you're seeing this slide, it's because you've been assigned a music review for my class. So let's talk about some of the things that I think you'll want to consider when approaching your music review and when composing it. So some goals for your writing. Obviously, we have some goals. The music review, you're not being paid to write music reviews. So what we want from you is to consider growing as a writer. That's always the most important thing for my class, is that you become a better critical thinker, a better writer, a better communicator. So when you are composing this particular assignment, I want you to think about some goals. First of all, you're going to practice backing up your opinions. So in any essay that you complete for the class, you're going to need to use evidence. So go back. Obviously, this time you don't have research. Your research is actually your own opinion, your personal stance on the music. So you're going to back up your opinions with evidence, let's say, from verse 2 or from the lyrics in the chorus or the beat in the intro. And that's the stuff that you're going to use to compose your essays. You're also going to consider tone, style, and audience. Now, obviously, you'll be doing that for many essays, but a lot of times we'll ask you to do slightly more formal tone, dress it up, and consider your audience to be academia or, let's say, a literary journal or something like that. But for this particular assignment, you can be a little bit more playful and it can be a little bit more informal. So you'll actually get to practice with a little bit of tone and style. I'll also be looking at organization. We're going to want to see organized thoughts. You'll probably want to write an outline or a blueprint before composing your essay. I'm also going to be looking for balanced, nuanced arguments. You might want to take a different approach than using the balanced, nuanced arguments. However, most of you, probably 99% of you, are going to try to compose a review that is nice and balanced and nuanced, and something that you might see, let's say, in Rolling Stone magazine or in, let's say, the Times-Picayune in the New York Times or something like that. Finally, and I've got this underlined because it's important, we're going to consider the big picture. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. So there are lots of purposes for reviews, that you see. Oftentimes they look at strengths and weaknesses of a product. They might be trying to get you to purchase something. So they're going to look at, well, what is this used for? What is it not? Does it meet the common expectations? Does it and some people read reviews just to reinforce their own opinions. They might buy it and then go back just to see if everybody else agrees with them. Some reviews are to gain knowledge for a product, and that is in order for the person to gain more knowledge so that they can improve. But this one in particular is really so that you can express your opinion and decide whether or not this music is meeting your expectation, your criteria for what makes good music. There are reviews everywhere, so it's not something that's going to be foreign to you. It's not going to be something that's an alien concept, right? You are going to be using reviews that are outside of even this class for the rest of your life. You might have to conduct an employee or employer evaluation where they consider how you're doing at work. A lot of times you'll see consumer reviews. You might go on Amazon and be considering a product, and you scroll down and you look at what other users are saying, how many stars they gave it, why they would give it a 3-star instead of a 4-star. You might have used Rate My Professor for some of your college courses to decide whether or not it's a professor you want to take that semester. So at the end of the day, what's the most important thing is that you look at other reviews and you see, well, what really works in a review? How do I compose a review that communicates my stance on the product effectively? So you must know the common expectations going in. Before you can review a product, you have to know what makes that product, just even at a very basic level, good. So, for example, what features are in an action movie? Let's say you're watching the next Marvel movie and you go in thinking that it's going to be this great action movie with thrilling fight scenes and lots of really cool CG effects with all the superheroes, and Iron Man's coming in and shooting his repulsor blast, and Captain America's jumping around and throwing his shield, and it's defying all the laws of physics. That's what you think the next Marvel movie is going to be. But what would happen if the next Marvel movie was just Tony Stark and Pepper Potts on a beach and they're just enjoying life and hanging out you're going to say, wait, there was 2 hours of that? I came here to see action. So there's a common assumption when you go to see an action movie or when you look at, let's say, a car. You assume that there's going to be, four tires, a radio, AC in it. Back in the day, that wasn't necessarily the case. Now that's a common assumption. So now you have to at least approach music the same way. There are common expectations for each genre of music that you might be approaching, and you actually have to foreground those expectations. You can also use it to help you structure the essay. If you want to talk about specific expectations and whether or not the music is meeting those expectations, that might be one way to organize your essay. Another way to organize your essay might be to use the W question. So for example, when. Sometimes music reflects a specific time period or, let's say, a cultural atmosphere or political climate. So, for example, back in the 60s, a lot of the music reflected the people's feelings toward the Vietnam War. Sometimes you might even have music that is timeless. So let's say love, right? Everybody sings about love. Well, if that's the case, then is this particular song doing that well? Is it executing this timeless, wonderful thing where it's capturing the human emotion of love or something like that? So you might also be considering why. Was this music intended to critique society? Did the artist just really do this because it's a dance song and it's intended to make some money, right? That might be something that enters into the equation when you're considering music. So where might actually be a consideration if you are considering where the music is coming from and whether or not it's reinforcing a tradition of that region. So for example, think about Zydeco and Cajun music locally. If you decide to tackle something like that, well, you have to decide, is it reflecting the culture, the lyrics kind of talking about, let's say, Gumbo and Mardi Gras and stuff like that, and is that one of the reasons you really like the music? What is something that's genre specific? What are you exactly tackling? And then who is something you're probably not going to have to tackle most of the time, majority of the time. However, if you choose an artist who has a persona that's, let's say, inextricably linked to their music, think about big personalities. Think Lady Gaga, David Bowie, Prince. These people who have somehow infused themselves into the music, and it's really an extension of them. So you might be considering, like I said, about those big personalities. A lot of bands, you could probably change the singer or change the drummer, change the guitarist, and as long as the person's talented, you might not know the difference and you might continue to listen to that band. But let's be honest here. If Lady Gaga suddenly showed up tomorrow and was like, I'm retiring, can someone just step into the role and just be like, oh, well, can Christina Aguilera step into the role and say, well, then I'll just become Lady Gaga? No, and that person would bring a totally different style and different themes and stuff to the music. So you might actually have to address some of that in your review. So when applying the common expectations, first and foremost, listen to your gut instinct, right? When you listen to a song, a lot of times, within the first 5-10 seconds, you're going to know whether or not you're digging it, right? Your finger starts floating over that skip button if it's not so great. But if you're really enjoying it, there's a reason you're going to give up 3 or 4 or 5 minutes of your life to listen to an entire song. And it especially says something if you're going to listen to it again. So listen to that gut instinct. What is it telling you? Why do you have this visceral connection to this song that you want to play over and over and over again? That reaction is important. What your heart and your head is telling you about a specific piece is vital for this specific assignment. Doesn't meet the expectations on your list. So you come to music with expectations about what you want to hear. Oh, I want to hear this big anthem and chorus, and I want to sing along. Well, that's an expectation that you have that somebody else might not. Somebody else might not really care if they can sing along. Maybe they just want 7-minute instrumentals of guitar solos and stuff. Well, so your expectations are different, and it's important for you to express those expectations so that your reader knows, look, this is what I'm looking for in this genre of music, and this particular song that I've chosen may or may not be doing that well. So think about the strengths and weaknesses, the 5 questions, and then the big picture. So let's look at this really quick. Let's look at a review. So last year, I was looking at lots and lots and lots of reviews because I had to buy a new guitar. in order to record and tour and play local shows and stuff. And let's be honest here. If you're looking to drop almost $1,000 on something, and you're like me and you're married and your wife is like, do you really want to drop $1,000 on something? You better do your reviews and better find the right ones. You have to look at all kinds of reviews, make sure it's got all the right qualities that you're looking for, make sure that it's reliable and everything. So let's look at this specific review, and you can help me decide whether or not you think this is doing, a good job as a review. So let's review the review. So this one says, reliable all around. They gave it 5 stars. It says, didn't buy off Amazon. Got it at Guitar Center, but this has been my baby for 5 years now. My mom has some older Fenders from the 70s that have really nice weight in the neck, but I always come back to this. While the neck isn't as heavy as I like, the fretboard is ultra long and makes for some really fun slides. The color is great too. I got it when I just started playing and I wanted something that I could still be girly while making me feel like a rocker. Nowadays, I love it for its beach rock vibe. This is a really reliable bass, and it was my first bass, and I will always love it just for the sentimental value alone. But it also has a great sound and is incredibly dependable, and I would recommend it to anyone looking for a bass you can play on anything. I brought this to my jazz band and pulled off everything from blues to jazz standards to funk, and it all sounds great and can adjust to any sound you want. Now, 7 people at the bottom, you can see, found this helpful. So just take a second and consider what parts of this you think are helpful. Just look at maybe, let's say, 2 or 3 parts that you think, oh, that's a good quality of this review. And then take a step back and think again, what parts of the review do you find suspect, or do you find not helpful at all if you were going to try to buy this bass? Okay, so hopefully you've taken a moment to look at that. So let's look at a few things that I find a little helpful. So it talked a little bit about the weight in the neck and the ultra long fretboard. So those are specific things, qualities of the guitar that I find, oh, they're talking about details now. They're talking about examples. So let's look at some other things. The person said that it is, you could play any type of music on it. So if it's a versatile bass guitar, then you could play a jazz band or blues or funk or anything like that. That's a really good quality to have in any type of instrument, versatility. What if, tomorrow I decide to drop playing rock and I started playing jazz? Well, that would be wonderful because I don't have to spend another grand on something that sounds good on jazz as well. Let's look at a few things that might not be so helpful though. So one of the things that was just glaring to me when I read this was, and I will always love it just for the sentimental value alone. It was my first bass. So it sounds like this person has a serious attachment to it. So it could be sort of coloring their outlook of this. It could be making it seem better than it really is because they just love it. It was their first, right? It's just like your first car. You made stories with it. It's the first time you ever drove to the beach and stuff like that. Or your first time at Disney World, it had this magic to it. But then the second or third time, maybe you didn't have such a great time with it, right? So a product like this person's just attached to it because it's their first. So let's take a look at this next slide. That is one way to create a faulty review. If you're just a little overly biased, maybe because of nostalgia or excessive emotional attachment or something like that. Perhaps it was the first album you ever bought, as a kid or something like that. So you have to actually consider your own biases and at least put those, express those and foreground those and be like, look, this was my first album. I can listen to it 100 times a day and I'll never get tired of it. But at least your reader knows that you're a little biased and stuff, and then you can actually start to work backwards from those and say, okay, but I can still look at it from an objective point of view. I also get a lot of essays with limited scope. And what I mean by that is sometimes you tend to listen to music maybe just for the lyrics. So I'll be reading through a music review sometimes, and it looks like, for all I know, this is a review of spoken word poetry because you don't mention the beat, you don't mention any of the actual vocals, like, oh, this person was singing these really high notes and it sounded great. I wouldn't know because all you did is talk about the lyrics and what those lyrics meant to you. So that's a problem because you've limited the scope of your review and you're biased because that's just what you listen to, just the lyrics. But let's be honest here. Let's say if you transplanted those lyrics, let's say it's a Taylor Swift song or a Beyonce song, and you transplanted those lyrics into a death metal album or jazz or Zydeco, would you still listen to that album at that point? I mean, you've been talking about the lyrics, but would you still listen to that album if they were transplanted into a genre that you don't listen to? So that's something to consider. Another thing that some students sort of might get hung up on, they go off topic a little bit, right? So let's say you were listening to this particular album, and you were on your way to vacation. You're like, oh, and my parents and I, we sang along together. It was a great family thing. So this album helped connect me and my family. That's great, but don't go any farther than that. Don't start getting into a personal narrative or a memoir. Focus on the music and what it does for you, how it moves you personally, not how it felt with everybody else, right? Also, some reviews just forget to back up their assertions with examples. Like I said, you're going to want to dig in and think about the specific details. Now, what it says here about being perfect or perfectly terrible, let's be honest here. Most music is not perfect, and most music is not perfectly terrible. If it was perfect, it'd be the last album you ever listened to in your entire life. Angels would have come out the sky and delivered it to you, and you would have been like, oh, crying from joy if you finally found the perfect album and you never have to listen to another one ever again. And you listen to it 100 times in repeat, you won't even leave your room because it's perfect, right? And very few albums are perfectly terrible, where your ears are bleeding and you're trying to jump out the windows, trying to get away from the music as if the room's on fire because it's just so horrible and it's agonizing, right? It's torture to listen to it. Most albums are not that bad. Probably there were some parts on beat or they were in key, right? You just don't like the genre. So you have to consider those things, and you have to consider what makes it not quite perfect or what makes it not quite the worst thing you've ever listened to, right? And then some reviews don't consider any of the 5 W questions we went over. And then finally, some reviews forget to think about the big picture, and they don't tell a story about why the review would matter. All right, so there are a few different approaches. The one that I'd say 95% of students pick, maybe even 99% of students, the balanced and nuanced approach, right? It's the kind of review you might see on a news channel or in a magazine and a newspaper. So you're going to want to look at the positives and the negatives of something, and you kind of balance it out. Like we said, not everything's perfect or perfectly terrible, so you would actually tell me, why track 3 was your favorite, but track 7 might have dragged a little bit. Maybe the verses got a little boring, and why was track 7 not your favorite, but track 3 was, right? The slam type of review is pretending like this song or this album is the best ever, right? And it's trying to convince people that it is perfect, and you're using a creative approach in order to and when I say creative approach, I mean you will actually be exaggerating, but your reader sort of knows that you're joking. Your reader sort of knows that you're exaggerating to be creative. So that's one way of doing it. Also, the rave. It's just the flip side of the coin. You're exaggerating to express this is the most terrible album on the face of the planet, and that no one should ever even look at it. They should all go out and find them and bury them deep underground so that the music can never be found again. Right? That's an exaggeration. Right? Just don't listen to it. But you're exaggerating in order to make a point, and you're being creative about it. You have to be very confident in your creative writing skills in order to tackle one of these 2 essays. But when those essays are good, they feel really energized and they feel fun. So if you're really confident in your writing skills, you might want to try them. All right, so some more approaches. Especially if you're doing the balanced and nuanced version, you might want to use a grading method, right? So you might want to think about assigning number scores, but you're writing an essay, right? You're writing a 1,000-word essay, and that's mostly in a prose format where you use paragraphs. So what you'll probably want to do is assign number scores, but you don't necessarily need to tell your reader, oh, I assigned it a 3. What you want to think about is assign it for yourself, and then you're going to explain why you assign those grades, and then you really just pull back on the numbers and just explain why this piece is getting this grade, right? And you'll want to use particular grades in specific areas instead of just giving it an overall score. Well, no, just like if I was grading your essay, you'd want to know, oh, I got a C in grammar, but I got an A in critical thinking. And that's far more helpful than I just give you an overall B and don't tell you what areas you can work on. So let's look at an example here from my own band, Finding Frequency. We submitted a song that was just a demo to be critiqued. As you could tell, this person wrote a nice little paragraph here. They gave us an overall 9. The age of the person is 84, and they're male. And they say right here, I quite love this song. The vocals are awesome. He's got kind of a scratchy voice, a little bit. Sounds very similar to the lead singer of Shinedown. There's a lot going on. This could be a little bit more played in the sense that they could be a little bit louder compared to the vocals, but they sound great. The vocals are nice and easy to understand, all in a beautiful song. And I would love to go to this concert. And the name is amazing. Okay, so the paragraph is helpful, but look right underneath that. You have actual numbers. So this person gave lyrics a 10, vocals a 10, the band name a 10. The song name was an 8, right? The beat was a 9, the song structure was a 9. So you can see here they gave lots of high numbers. And it's interesting to me that they gave the song name an 8, but the band name a 10, right? So you can see like where this person likes these things. How does this song make you feel? You can actually do this when you're brainstorming, right? How does a song make you feel? Make you feel excited, intrigued, peaceful, anxious? And then you got to think about what type of genre this is. So this person put alternative, other, and pop. Right? Do you want to hear it again? I mean, you can answer these questions in your review. Yes, you want to hear it again. You'd love to hear this song every day. Every time you wake up, you throw this album in to help wake you up, right? Before going to school in the morning. So this is all stuff that can help you construct your essay. And look, even right down here, which well-known artist does this song remind you of? That's good. You can sometimes point back at other artists and say, oh, this artist is doing this kind of thing. They're doing it better or worse than these other artists, right? Let's look at another example. This one got a 7. This person was 54. So you know that they might be bringing a different set of criteria. This was the same song, but some things that they didn't like. So they enjoyed the melody, the lyrics, the instruments, and the rhythm. Quality of the vocals they didn't like as much, especially the background vocals. So this picking out a specific part. They enjoyed the passionate delivery, but they didn't like the background vocals at all. And then look at the band name here. That other person who was a bit younger liked the band name a lot. Gave it a 10. This same person, same song, everything. Another person gave it a 6, right? And that's what's going to happen if everyone in your class reviewed the same album. You all might give different scores, and that's a good thing. You just have to be able to back it up. So you have to tell us, well, which artist do you think this person reminds you of? What are the words that make you sort of describe how you're feeling? So here's some sample music review sites. Most of these, they'll do probably shorter critiques than what you're composing for the class, right? You're doing 1,000 words, is your absolute minimum. 1,200 is a nice target. Don't go over 1,500. Practice streamlining. But some of these different sources would be a good starting point for you. Just look at how other people who are paid to write these articles talk about music. Each of these people will talk about music and use specific words when they're talking about music. And we're not talking about getting overly technical, right? We're talking about, they're talking about how it makes them feel energized or might make them feel like they want to dance, right? So that's all. Look at the way other people talk about music and then you can try to bring it. And you don't have to talk about stuff in a technical way. So you might be a musician yourself, or somebody in your family might be, but you don't want to bog down your reader with all this technical stuff. Oh, they use the secondary dominant to move from the chorus to the bridge. So you don't need to do that. That's sort of unnecessary, and you have to pretend like your audience is just your average listener who just enjoys music. You also probably want to avoid biographical info. That's not important. Most people don't listen to an album because they like the biography of the artist. Oh, well, I heard that this artist, grew up in San Francisco and then they moved to New Orleans. That's not what's going to draw you to the album. It's going to be the cool music that you're really digging. Um, so you're going to want to focus on, does the music make you feel something? Forlorn, joyous? Does it make you want to dance, right? Does it make you want to find your friends and all sing along or rebel? Those are things that you're going to want to put in your review. You can also consider, does the tone match the lyrics? Maybe the lyrics are really kind of sad, but they're on top of a happy pop song. That happens sometimes, and it's kind of weird. But is it working for you? Do you like that aspect of it? Do the vocals match? It might be a really pretty song, but the vocalist has a really harsh, scratchy voice, kind of like mine. I'm going hoarse right now, and so if I tried to sing over a nice, pretty pop song with some just piano and strings, it would sound awful, and you can point that out. So you can also think about, does the song feel repetitive? A lot of these songs are, especially if they're more than 3 or 4 minutes long, end up feeling a little bit repetitive. They drag a little bit. So does the artist do something to make it feel unexpected or to build it up? Does suddenly the big orchestra come in behind it, or extra instruments build up as the song goes to make you still feel attached to the song? Let's talk about cliches and lyrics as well. You might be thinking to yourself, oh, cliches and lyrics. Oh, I've heard people sing about this before. But lots of artists use cliches, and that makes people like it even more. So if I'm listening to a country song, for example, I might say, oh man, he's talking about, his truck again, and, going out to the levee and, dancing in the moonlight and stuff like that. He might be talking about that, but that might be a reason why someone else who listens to country likes the music. Right? Same thing with New Orleans music. You might be proud of the fact that we have Mardi Gras and that we dance in the streets and eat this great food and stuff like that in the hot summers. So you might actually listen to it for those cliches, and you'd be kind of like, whoa, where did that stuff go if it was taken away? So you could go either way with that. You might say, oh, this is cool. I've never heard somebody talk about this before, and that's a good thing. Or you could say, oh, they're talking about things I really like, and that's a good thing. So think about whether or not the song tells a story or has a theme that's resonating with you. Maybe you're like, oh, I like the way they captured this social problem or this part about the human condition, right? And you can talk about that. And then let's think about musicianship too. Sometimes people, say, oh, these great musicians and they're doing all this stuff. Well, sometimes maybe it's a little too complex and they're doing some really crazy stuff. It's experimental. But at the end of the day, you just want a simple song that you could sing along to. And then sometimes that might not be the case. So you have to consider this when you're thinking about your review. So remember, you can focus on vocals, instruments or musicianship, the composition or structure of the song, lyrics, the beat. Does it make you want to get up and dance, or does it kind of have this like foreboding beat? The vibe or the tone. It's a song done by a heavy metal band sounds vastly different from a hip hop band who uses the same exact chords, the same exact instruments, or something like that. There might be just a different feel to the song. A lot of people cover each other's songs, so you might even be tackling a cover song and saying, look, this band does the same exact thing as this hip hop artist, but they turned it into a rock song. And listen to how that sounds. It's just a different vibe. So think about song name, the production quality. Does it sound like somebody just did it in their basement or in their garage, or does it sound like they went to a $1 million studio and everything sounds pristine and perfect? And then there are lots of genre-specific expectations you'll have to consider. Each genre might call for a different word choice as well. So when you're discussing a pop album, you're probably going to want to be thinking about upbeat stuff or how beautiful it is and everything. Contrast that with, let's say, a metal album, which might feel violent or dark, or like a jazz album, which might be a little bit more whimsical and different. So just think about the type of music and what type of verbs especially you're going to want to associate, what type of adjectives you want to associate to describe that music. So for me, I listen to music for a lot of different reasons. My personal experience with music is, first of all, I've been playing music for a long time, but also for most of my life, I've either wanted to listen to it to dance or to sing along, Or, maybe I'm feeling a certain way at a certain time of day and I'm feeling angry, so I want to turn on a certain type of music to help me get that cathartic feeling, right? To get me through an emotion. So why do you listen to music? And why don't you bring that out in your essay? Because this is a personal essay. You can use I, you can use we, you can talk about your opinion. So think about your personal biases and what you're bringing to the view. And your reason for loving music or not even liking music that much might be very different from somebody else. So think about, why do you come to music, and then if you chose 2 or 3 songs or an album to review or something like that, why did you pick that one? If you listen to all this different music, there's a reason you chose this album. So dig in deep and make it personal. You don't have to talk about the background of the artist. You just have to talk about your background. What made you come into contact with this music? Why does it impact you? How did it leave an indelible mark on you? Consider this. Maybe you are the Grammy Council. You are a council of one, and you're supposed to give an award. It could be a bad award too, to this song. Why'd you give it the worst song of the year award? Why'd you give it the best song? Or why would you give this thing a Grammy for best vocals? So you have to explain yourself in these 1,000 words or 1,200 words why you're giving it this, worst album of the year award. You're allowed to play with style and tone a little bit in this one. So if you want to experiment a little bit with grammar and rhythm and beat and stuff like that to match the music, I am okay with that. I'm sure, and we can talk more about that in class. Don't be afraid to experiment, but like I said, with a purpose. So if you decide to use, if you're using jazz, for example, as a subject, you might want to use something a little bit more whimsical in the way you compose the essay, instead of it being so structured and, here are my 3 main points and I will structure my paragraphs this way. You might want to do something a little different. All right, so try to connect with your audience. Think of your audience as someone who might be interested in the music, and what you're trying to tell them is, I really love the music, so you might want to give it a try too. But they're going to say, oh, well, I don't listen to that genre, maybe. But you might say, yes, but it's still worth listening because of X, Y, Z. It's still worth giving this a try because even though you don't listen to metal, or even though you don't listen to country, you don't listen to hip hop, listen to these lyrics. Like, they're really trying to tell us something. They're trying to capture something important about our society today, right? You can have some informal tone and use some colloquialisms. Let's say it's a poppy, fun song, and it's talking about the song is talking about texting and stuff like that. Each other because you're in love, and you use funny hashtags like, oh, this song is just so bubbly and fun. #pop, something like that. That's okay. You just have to do it with a purpose and make sure it matches the review. All right. So when choosing the subject. For the purposes of this class, I'd prefer if you chose a local or maybe like a fledgling artist, just someone just sort of only been in the game a few years. They're not famous. These upcoming artists, they don't have much press coverage, and they don't have all these global followers and stuff like that. So you actually get to be the first person to trailblaze. First of all, it heads off plagiarism, which, of course, you're a wonderful student. You would never think about doing that. But let's be honest here. If you are looking at Michael Jackson or Taylor Swift or something like that, 100,000 people have already written about these artists. What more can you really say about the person? So if you go look at the article, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, that's good. And then you kind of copy paste, and it's really not your article anymore. So I want you to trailblaze. I want this to be personal and something new. So if it's just a new artist that really doesn't have much about them, that's all you. That's great. That's something you might even be able to get published. You'll have more passion for it because you're not letting somebody else's beliefs about the music really help define your opinion. Finally, most of these artists that are just kind of new and just getting in the game have room for improvement. It's early in their career. They don't have 10, 20 years under their belt, so you can actually have more to write about since you have to get to 1,000, 1,200 words. That's a lot. A lot of these artists have been in the game forever. What more are you going to say about them? They're at the top of their game. They're doing everything right, and they have $1 million studio behind them to make them sound right. They have writers. They're no longer writing their own stuff. A lot of them bring in the best writers to help them get the next top 100 hit. So what are you going to tell them how are you going to tell them to improve? So um, we're going to try to use upcoming artists, maybe some locals and stuff like that, and there are lots of resources to find. Um, you can use new artists to watch lists. They have these things on Spotify, Pandora, all of that, and try to look at artists that maybe only have, I don't know, 50,000, 100,000 social media followers. Maybe they've been on tour, but they've never, played at some big concert or arena or something like that. They're just still just sort of touring around. Those are great artists to find, and you get to discover them. And they can be in your genre. If you like hip hop, if you like jazz, if you like country, find those new artists that are going to be in 5 or 10 years the next big thing, right? Reverb Nation is another local. It has charts, and you can look at the top 100 rock artists or top 100 alternative or top 100 metal artists in your region. So you'll go to that, and you'll actually get to refine your search, and you'll say, okay, well, I like rock music, so I'm going to click rock. And now I'm going to say, I want to find people in New Orleans, or I want to find people in Hammond, or I want to find people in Baton Rouge. And it'll give you the charts for the locals that are just tearing up the local scene. You can also do your own research. That's perfectly fine. You know your genre, and you know how to find new music. So all good ways to find a good subject that you're passionate about. Finally, let's talk about the big picture. It's the last thing I'm going to talk about, and I think it's important. You're going to think about the music, and you're going to not just say, well, I have this opinion about it. If I get to the end of your review and I can just say, oh, okay, so you like this country song. So what? And this is going to go for every essay you write this year. I'm going to get to the end of your essay, I'm going to say, so what? What's at stake here? Why should I care? And why should other people care? Why should all of your classmates and anybody else across the world care? If you can answer that question, you're doing this thing well, then I'm going to challenge you to do, which is to think about the relevance. Make me feel like your writing is significant. You have a wonderful voice, a wonderful brain. Use it to express your opinion, and then tell me why your opinion matters. So, for example, the music here might be trailblazing. Maybe it's doing something different and pushing music in a whole new direction or changing the genre. So you're talking about this country song, and country's been around for a long time, and maybe this artist is doing something all new, pioneering. Like, oh, look at the way that they're incorporating, rap or R&B into their country now. And like, look, this is great. It's changing the genre, and the next artists are going to be changed forever too. And that's great. Music's evolving. What does that say about us? That music evolves just like humans do, right? And we can invent new things. Cool. So now you're talking about significance. Human beings invent new things, and we incorporate new things, and we evolve. Maybe it embraces a tradition well. Maybe it's resurrecting an old type of genre, right? Maybe it's resurrecting old 60s rock, and it's embracing that tradition and doing it successfully. And that says something that we can look back at our history and bring something back and embrace it all over again. Also, a lot of times you're going to look at the lyrics or like maybe the ideas of the song and think about whether or not it's saying something about us as human beings, right? Is it capturing something about the way that we are as a community? Is the music connecting us to each other? Maybe it's just a dance song, but that's a good thing. Maybe there's a tradition of dance in this area, with Cajun and Zydeco music, and people like to dance, or like, country with two-step or hip-hop, people like to dance to that. So maybe this music isn't trying to say something about society or culture, but maybe it's trying to build a society or culture. Maybe it's trying to build us as a community. And so you're covering these songs, and you're reviewing them, and you're saying, look, this song is doing that so well. Like, it just makes me want to get up and dance and find my community and like all have a great time together. That's great. That's good if you can find that and express that in your review. So a couple more things to reflect on. Why do people listen to music? Why? So art, has been pretty much big part of every society and civilization throughout history, and music is a big part of art. So why do people continue to use art to express themselves, right? To express like personal emotions, or even express parts about our culture, or to critique our politics, or to critique the way other humans treat each other, war and stuff. Why do we keep doing that? What does it say about our identity as people? So what I want you to think about is, what is the cultural significance and long-lasting impact of music on us as individuals or on other people? how is music used to express ourselves and to connect with others? Those things can help you possibly find a direction for your essay. Instead of it just being about, oh, well, I like this song and it makes me happy in the morning, or when I get off of school, I'm so happy to go listen to my favorite song because I feel free. All right, well, why do people listen to music? To express that freedom. Why did this song that you pick feel significant or relevant enough? And why should another person listen to music? Why should another person listen to this? Think about these things, and you might be able to craft sort of an overarching story for your review. And that's when you get into like a really great review, when it feels like it's relevant, it's significant, it's important. Make your voice heard, and that's something that you're going to be able to carry on with you for the other essays in this class, whether it be a literary analysis, and we're talking about literature as art, or argument essays where you're arguing for something big and important, and you're trying to tell somebody this is important because of this. So I hope that you have found this helpful and insightful today. All of these techniques can be used to help build up your own essay as you compose it. But remember, one of the best ways to compose a good review, look at other reviews. See how other people write about music, internalize that stuff, and really think about how you can grow as a writer in order to sort of take some of those tools that other people use, put those in your toolkit, and use those to write a great essay. I'm looking forward to seeing what you compose, and let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this has been helpful. Have a great day.